Thank you so much. If you are just joining us on apex1radio.com or on Facebook, this is Fiesta, the 164th edition of the show. We will be talking about music in Kenya, and we'll be finding out just how this art has evolved in this great tourism giant. If you haven't been to Kenya, then your next trip to Africa should be taking you to that country. When you go to Kenya, come back, then thank me. We'll be talking about Kenya's music not too long from now. In the next couple of seconds, we will be finding out just how this music has evolved over the years, over generations. And so, apart from the fauna and flora you would enjoy while on a tourism trip to Kenya, the country's sounds and beats would motivate you to the extent that you would like to extend your stay in the East African economic stronghold. Kenya's music has evolved over the years, but at every generation, it has sounded so palatable to the ears, and of course, it's been very danceable. From the old-timers to contemporary music, Kenya has stood tall, not only in the East African sub-region, but on the continent as a whole. In the second of a series of feature reports on the tourist attraction, Noella Marjorie takes us across the world of Kenyan music and explains just how it has evolved. Noella, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ernest, and good morning. Kenya is home to 43 distinct tribes, distinct in culture, language, traditions, and music. Music historians date the genesis of the local music scene in the early 1940s, when the various disparate tribes across the country forged a purposeful unity against colonialist occupation. By the early 60s, with Kenya at the cusp of independence, Nairobi was home to the only state-of-the-art recording studio in the region, the Columbia Broadcast Studio, and had begun to gain a reputation as East Africa's musical hub, attracting visiting artists from around the continent and beyond. By 1965, the city in the sun was bursting with budding recording artists and was estimated to average 1,000 new recordings published every month, music that sold copies across Africa before eventually finding its way through distributors in the American and European markets. Now, even as the recording scene in Nairobi flourished, there was no single music style or genre attributed to Kenya. While the capital city sought a competitive technological edge in the region's budding music industry, the traditional musical heritage of Kenya's tribes was charting its own course in a collaborative and resonant evolution far from the city. Among Kenya's many tribes, it is the contributions of the Luo tribe that eventually spurred the emergence of the musical genre that was to become Kenya's signature sound, Benga, which translates to beautiful thing in the Luo language. Tracing its roots to Lake Victoria's shores, Benga evolved from the tribal music of the Luo people, who adapted the sounds of their traditional instruments, the nyatiti and urutu, an 8-string lyre and a fiddle respectively, to the acoustic guitar. Benga was popularized widely by artists like John Ongara, who is credited as the father of Benga, Daniel Owino Misiani, Ochieng Nelly, and Daniel Kamau Mwai, to name a few. These pioneers initially drew inspiration from the influences of Cuban rumba and the Congolese soukous, and later from reggae. And meanwhile, on the Kenyan coast, the taarab melodies of Zanzibar fermented a new and enthusiastic following among the Swahili people. Grounded on percussive rhythms and heavily influenced by Arabic music, taarab united the tribes across the East African shores through a common language, Swahili, and quickly became the musical genre that ruled the airwaves among coastal tribes in Kenya. Together, Benga and taarab defined the musical stylings of Kenya for decades. Ernest?
At the start of the millennium, however, it appeared that the Kenyan music industry had lost its stronghold in the region. Now, Tanzania and Nigerian musicians in particular have dominated the country's music industry. Amid this apparent collapse of Kenya's own industry, there exists a heated debate about the causes and factors influencing the decline of Kenya's music scene, Noella.
Yes, Ernest, you're absolutely right. This debate can best be simplified into two core arguments. The first, propagated by traditionalists, argues that Kenyan musicians have discarded their traditional roots and adopted the sound and aesthetic of rap and pop juggernauts in the West, effectively committing cultural suicide and consequently erasing Kenya's gold standard in music. Now, the second, an argument most commonly proffered by Kenyan musicians themselves, blames a rigidly monopolized industry that relies on cronyism and quid pro quo economics and actively bars young Kenyan musicians from the airwaves in favor of their wealthier international counterparts. But despite this dissonance, Kenya is now on the verge of a resurgence as a leader in the industry in East Africa, with the introduction of a new genre that's gained a feverish popularity in just the past couple of years. Much like Benga, Kenya's newest sound, the heart-thumping beats of Gengetone, were created not in a studio, but on the streets of the sprawling low-income estates that punctuate the city landscape of Nairobi. And at the top of the food chain, the rabble is separated from the giants with artists like Sauti Sol, Ethic, Femi One, and the Ochunglo family paving the way to stardom. Ernest?
And that stardom is definitely the ultimate goal attained by great strides. So, how exactly did creative innovators go about with this, Noella?
Well, when faced with the absence of representation in the recording industry, Ernest, Gengetone artists promoted their music through an underground system of sorts, distributing their newly minted albums in a collaborative arrangement with a uniquely Kenyan system of public transportation, the matatus. These are privately owned buses with a long-running cult status in the city, emblazoned with pop culture references and known for their booming sound systems that can be heard blasting the very latest of music hits through the streets of Nairobi. And as it turned out, this was a most effective method in popularizing the fledgling genre. Shaped by the influences of rap, Afrobeats, and dancehall music, Gengetone is raw and gritty, with lyrics that are deliberately coarse and wholly unrepentant. It is performed in Sheng mostly, a fluid and constantly evolving street version of Swahili slang, and in many ways represents a cultural shift in popular music in Kenya, one which seems to appreciate that Kenya's modern population seeks to divest itself of traditional and tribal constraints and compete on the gilded global stage. And judging by its rapidly growing presence on the regional music scene, there seems to be no doubt that Gengetone is the new sound of Kenya. Ernest?
Gengetone is definitely the new sound of Kenya. Noella, tell me, which one would you go for? I do the old timers. I'm not a contemporary person in terms of music. So who would you bet for as far as Kenya's music is concerned?
I have an appreciation for both, but I think right now Gengetone would probably win out of Benga with most of the population in Kenya.
Okay. That's beautiful, Noella. Thank you so much. You will be right back with our arts, culture, and entertainment news round for the week. Thank you so much, Noella.
See you soon.
Bye.